Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our weekly banter. Ciao, Matteo.
Ciao, Luca. Hi, folks. And I'm very happy. This is another episode, and we're going to talk about a lot of interesting things and a lot of things that a lot of people do wrong most of the time. And there is a lot of debate. So I'm very happy we are covering this topic today, Luca.
Yeah, if I can tell you something funny that happened last week, when I was in Amsterdam, I had the chance of meeting by side channels a person I met for the first time in 2013, if I'm not wrong, and
Ooh,
part of
long
our
time ago.
long time ago. And I'm not gonna give any detail, but uh, we actually met talking about the same topic we are talking today,
Ooh, oh,
debate about how to handle authorization authentication in an API gateway. Let's leave
wow.
it in that way. So let's get down to business because it feels that it's a hot topic even in the hands of faith.
Oh, it
So
is. It is always an hot topic. Look, you will laugh, okay? Because I was debating this for 30 minutes for the last 30 minutes with our team.
I am not surprised. But
This is the reason. This is the reason why I was late. So funny enough.
I think there's actually something I don't know how to say, but don't you feel that people they have a little bit of fear when they talk about authentication and authorization? It's a little bit of
Well,
I don't know.
so let's talk about the problem. The reason, the first part is, uh, it's whenever there is security involved, a lot of people know that if they make a mistake, that mistake can be very expensive, can be a very
Yeah,
expensive mistake. Okay. Therefore, they get scared about making that mistake because they tread with caution. Okay. Oh, well, yeah. Okay. Maybe I should buy this component from somebody that knows how to do this very well. Okay.
Auth0, just to name
Oh,
one.
well, there is Auth0 now. After Auth0, there are
Okta.
three more. There are three more that sell this. Okay, so frankly, even the best way to avoid a lot of scams, okay, in if you're doing a SaaS or a new SaaS, anything, is to only allow OAuth2. We'll cover this later, but OAuth2 flows from major providers. So if an account is valid for Google, then probably it's valid also for us. Okay, like if somebody's scamming, like Google does a lot of verification on its own and so on
Yeah.
and so forth. And so, because of that, you can probably trust what they did. Okay. So again, these kind of flows are critical. User verification. Okay, verifying that I say I am Matteo Collina. Well, somebody probably has looked at my documents and verified that in fact I am Matteo Collina. Okay. And and this is a problem that a lot of people have, especially when accepting third-party services. So but it's not the topic. That part is not the topic of our discussion today. Okay.
Well, but you jumped into OAuth, which
Yeah.
probably that's where it started. I saw, as they're called, they are like token-based, right,
Yes.
authentication. And probably we should draw a demarcation line between authentication and authorization. A lot of people kind of like misinterpret it, but one is called Authn, the other one Auth-Z. One, it takes care of identity, like you were saying,
Yes.
Matteo is Matteo. The other one takes care of, can Matteo do this, right?
Yes.
Um, so maybe let's get deep into Auth0, our old good friend,
Auth0? No.
not Auth0, Auth
Oh.
2.0. Yeah, also Auth0, come on, they are our friends. Wink, wink. Let's talk about OAuth 2.0,
So
right? The
OAuth 2.0. Well,
mm.
so
When would you use it? When don't you use it? What is the kind of like
OAuth is the OAuth flow. Okay, is born for one specific use case. Okay, you have three actors in the system. You have the user, you have your server, and you have a third party called the provider, which is the one, okay, that hosts the that provides the credential that says that the user is who we say is to be, okay, that guarantees that this call come from that specific user.
So make an example. Matteo is logging into Luca's new social network, and he does the login with let's go a little bit back in time. Login with Facebook.
Fantastic. Okay. Yes, that's exactly what it is. It's logging with Facebook, logging with Google, login with
GitHub,
Microsoft,
anything.
log with GitHub. Okay, so yes, but that user flow, okay, is most of the time, most implementation of, like a lot of the, even that user flow of doing that dance with OAuth, okay, is very easy to implement it insecurely.
Yeah, because you're talking about the life cycle, right? Of doing.
Yes, no, but it's not just about the life cycle, okay? It's about the fact that you need, in order for preventing a certain parameters for that exchange to be gathered by an attacker, okay, somebody that interject, you need to make sure that you pass certain parameters, okay, certain random data, okay, back and forth. In addition, okay, that they're classified as optional most of the time. However, some providers enforce them as mandatory. But it's very important that you always follow that data. Let me get that information.
Exactly. Do you have any kind of
I do. Just give me just a second, because you know why I do? Because as all the things that I've done in this in this system, I ended up learning via Fastify. Okay. So Fastify is all these plugins to do all these sort of things, and therefore it receives a tremendous amount of security reports. One of which was due about to the Fastify-OAuth 2 system module, which is the OAuth 2 adapter for
you know who wrote it?
Of course, Thomas.
You remember when?
When he was at Let's Do It. Well, that module was built on the module of another of my friend. Okay, it's a module called, I think, Simple OAuth 2. Okay,
yeah.
Simple OAuth 2 was written by a friend of mine, Andrea Reginato, which I don't think is in tech anymore. Okay. To be honest, I think
after touching OAuth 2, he decided to move to Carpenter.
Yeah.
Actually, you wrote the OAuth spec, right?
Oh yeah, I do. Andrea Regina, let's see. It's still. I think he's doing other stuff. No, he's still coding. Okay. I don't know what he's doing these days. Hi, Andrea. I don't know if you're going to watch this, but this is. We met a long time ago.
We need to tag him so that then he's gonna watch it for sure. Maybe maybe we should have him if he's up to for
a chat. Okay, right, yeah, we did basically we did some stuff together back in 2012, something like that, when he was doing IoT stuff. So long time ago. I don't know what he's doing these days.
And by the way, Theo, I think what we are gonna kind of see is that there is a very hot topic nowadays about authentication. That is the MCP authentication for the infamous and very hipster MCP servers. I was in a conversation, by the way, with some fellas of the OpenAPI Foundation.
Ooh.
About that, because there is a lot of kind of debate on what, how it should be handled in a MCP because it's a system to system, right? Theoretically.
Yes, but OAuth 2 still can do that. Okay, so I think generically OAuth 2 is based a lot on not only but on the JWT flow. Okay, and the full system actually is phenomenal because you can have full machine to machine flow, and even doing even better, you can even have a flow where as a user, okay, I have this component that I am authorizing this component to do calls on my behalf, and that all of that would work correctly. So OAuth 2, I think it can totally handle that case. Okay.
Yeah,
100%.
because it does impersonation and on behalf of. Sorry.
It's fantastic. It's fantastic.
And what about the life cycle of the call? Because probably we didn't touch. So how does the dance, the so-called OAuth dance work?
It's a nightmare. Let me the fundamental problem is, so I'm absolutely paraphrasing. Okay, this was OAuth 1. This is OAuth 2 on the size of the spec. The chances of getting the spec wrong, super high. Okay. Now, also, each individual vendor implement the spec with their own quirks. So the same code mostly works for all the vendors. Okay. Mostly. When adding another system, it's a little bit different. What will it be? Okay. But then it requires a patch. Okay. So there is a reason why in simple OAuth 2, we have all the configuration for each one of the providers already built in, because it's so easy to do it wrong, and then debugging it's very, very hard even. So
a little bit like Passport, right? The old Passport JS.
So Passport is slightly different. Okay, Passport is a slightly different system. Okay, so OAuth 2 gets you the token. Okay.
Yeah.
But it does not handle the concept of session. So the concept of session is left up to you to handle with those 2. It doesn't cover how the session on your end. Okay?
So you build, you mean about the refreshing flow and
exactly, but there's not just that. Is like when you're logged in, you probably want to have some metadata attached to the user session, like what languages uses, his card, I don't know, blah, 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 stuff like that. You don't put that. You need to put that, like Passport generically handles the session. On the other side, just OAuth 2 is a spec, so it does not tell you how to need to handle the session.
Yeah.
Fastify OAuth 2 just handle OAuth 2 flow and leaves you handle the session the way you want. We have a component called Fastify Password, which is a port of the original Passport.js into Fastify Lingo. And Fastify Passport is built as the concept of a session. You can, of course, we have a couple of modules for running sessions in Fastify, so you can combine them and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
But for JWT, you don't need to have like you can use JWT without using OAuth 2. Okay, like JWT is a completely generic flow. Okay, in fact, I think JWT generically is one of the best thing available. Apart from that, is pretty much expensive and slow. Okay.
Let's jump into JOT, right? The so-called JWT JOT, we can call it as.
Yeah, I never understood that. Why they say it's pronounced JOT? I can't do it. Okay, I can't force.
Because JWT, if you squeeze it fast, is JOT, right?
JOT.
Yeah, it's just. I think it's more a slang than anything else, because I mean, like it's based on web token, right?
The first time I heard that, I couldn't understand what the heck that was.
Oh, the JOT.
The JOT. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, that is. So if you hear this aloud, that will be it.
But so
So
why is JWT
okay. So the
new
fundamental
standard, you think?
okay, JWT is great, okay, because it allows you essentially to have an architecture where so you have a system, okay, typically is a microservice. It's where it's useful, okay, various scenarios. I encode that, send that to the browser, gets the JOT, okay, the JOT has some state within it, okay, it already has it's signed, so I don't need to worry about tampering. It has metadata inside the JOT, and it has an expiration date. So if you create a JOT without an expiration date, there is a specific ring in hell for you, okay? And don't do that, okay? Otherwise, you will end up there, okay? So don't create a JOT without an expiration date. I have seen them, and 100% of the time, they led to massive security incidents.
Well,
so,
yeah, right. Because, but explain also the reason why for.
Okay, so well, let's
everyone.
go into the reason. So when you receive a JOT, okay, you have two modes of operating a JOT. Okay, so with a JOT, okay, when you typically do this kind of dance with OAuth 2 and so on and so forth, you have a thing called a refresh token and the actual JOT token. The refresh token is something that you use to get a JOT. The JOT expires, okay? The JOT can expire. I can expire my JOT, okay? And whenever, and the verifier says, no, this has been expired, okay? It has a timestamp that is in the past, and I consider it expired. Okay. Now, if you put an infinite amount of time in this flow, okay, what you can avoid doing is I can avoid maintaining a revocation list for the JOT. Okay, so if I can avoid putting an entry on my database with that token. Okay,
Yeah.
This is the key part that people, when designing this system, wanted to avoid. So I can avoid creating for each session putting something in the database. Okay, because that simplifies a lot of work in various ways. So it reduces a lot the work. Okay, so every time I don't need to go to the database to validate this. I can just validate it locally, like a snap. Okay, but that system, and if I put a JOT with a time window that is valid 5 minutes,
yeah,
okay, I can have the token done every 5 minutes. Okay, now this is very secure. If you have both the fresh token and the token itself, okay, every time the JOT expires, I can get a new token.
Yeah.
It's perfect because I can do infinite amount of call every 5 minutes, okay, with my token, and then just do once with the new token. Now, every single time you make an API call somewhere and you move data on the internet, of course, you increase the likelihood of that token being leaked. Okay.
Clearly, yeah.
This is a principle of security, okay, of cryptography and security. So by minimizing the amount of time that flow through, okay, and minimizing the amount of systems where that token gets moved, we have actually make it very, very we are making the system more secure. Okay. Now this whole thing works because you have a window of 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 15 minutes, an hour, you name it. Okay, this is the validity time within which, okay, a token will consider valid by the system. Okay, and be careful. You use the refresh token to issue a JOT, then that user authorization, so that user permissions get revoked. Okay, it will still have those permissions for next 5 minutes while that JOT is active. Okay,
Clearly.
This is the clearly most important part that people don't understand about OAuth 2 and JWT system. If your security model does not allow you for that, okay, you should not be using JWT for authentication in your system. Full stop.
Yeah, because clearly the session, the state is deferred to the user for that length of the validity of the token.
Yes.
So for that time window, you cannot do much.
Yes.
You could still apply an is valid server side, though.
But then you need to verify, to store each individual JOT, okay, or do a database call and check and do a check on that account validity, okay? Which were things that you wanted to avoid doing.
Why? Yeah, because of the cost of all the calls.
Yes, but it's not just that, okay? It's about the splitting responsibilities and moving and talking about microservices, okay? If in a system, okay, if all microservices entry needs to validate the user credentials and accounts at each time a service is invoked, okay, the authentication system is very much a big bottleneck of the whole system. Yeah. And it's going to also to probably fall very quickly, possibly. But also, it's going to add a lot of latency overall in any microservice network. So when you're building a microservice system or even a service system for all intent and purposes, okay, you don't want to go and fetch the user context and user credentials and metadata from wherever this lives, okay, at every single hop of the way, because every single time you do that call is, I don't know, 10, 20 milliseconds that goes down. And you need to respond the user in 200 milliseconds or less. Now, if you have 5 microservices, okay, if you have 5 microservices down, you cannot afford to do that call at all. Okay, you can do it once, maybe, okay? But that's one, okay? So the generic flow is usually, a lot of people will do that, okay? Some people will do that. Will put even authorization metadata inside the JOT, okay? Yeah. And then move the JOT throughout the system and consider, well, every single time you can validate this is valid, and then I take that information from the JOT, okay?
Because, like we said, the JOT is also a signing mechanism, right, to avoid tampering and so on. So maybe we should kind of like look briefly on two things, the symmetrical and asymmetrical signing, and then drum roll, key rotation. Probably the key rotation is going to be the hot topic of the day.
Okay, first of all, okay, every single time I do an interview question, and I said this multiple times publicly, so I asked this same question that you just said, that you just put down, okay? What are the signing mechanism, okay, of the JWT? Okay, first of all, a few people will say, I don't know why, okay, to be honest, that the JOT is ciphered, okay? And then I typically go and ask them, oh, using which algorithm it's ciphered? And they answer base 64, okay? Then I have a big red button here called next. And then I press the button, the call ends, and the next candidate arrives, okay? If you say that, you are out. Now, base 64 is not an encryption algorithm, okay? Let's be very frank and clear.
Yeah, but people love the concept of, hashing and so on.
Yeah, but it's not an hash.
No, I know.
Oh, gosh. Okay, so this is the first one, okay? So then you can sign a JOT, okay, using a symmetric or asymmetric flow, okay? Symmetric flow, okay, almost never use this thing, okay? Well, it's not true. You use it if you emit your JOT, okay, and you are the only one that consumes them, okay? That's the only reason why you do that. Okay?
And tell maybe everyone why, because of the symmetrical is based on trust.
Yeah, because if you are in a network, okay, and you need the multiple actors needs to validate that JOT, now every actor need to have the same key. And now if any actor gets compromised, They can access to all the keys. Don't do this, okay? So unless
Don't
you
do
are,
it at home.
don't do it at home. Okay. So, okay, asymmetric. Asymmetric means that your provider, okay, typically gives you a URL in which it publishes its own certificate. It's a public certificate. It's asymmetric, so there is a private system, a private key, and a public key. The private key is used to sign the JOT. The public key is used to verify the JOT. You can, so every JOT created with this system typically has the URL of the public key encoded in the JOT. So you can go and take the JOT, decode the JOT, because it's base 64, guys, okay? Decode the JOT, take the JOT. Once you have it in your hand, okay, go get the URL, go get that URL, that public certificate, okay? Which, to be honest, at this point, you know that it's coming from the right source because of HTTPS and all that system, okay? Now, after you have done all of that, you can take that public key and use that key to verify your private, to verify your JOT. And that you can do it in every system of your network. This is beautiful.
And by the way, you gave the answer to your interview question while you were talking.
Of course, but I've done it multiple times. You know, look, I can even send. I am pretty sure that I can take this recording, send this to candidates, okay, and they will still mumble it up.
Let's see if people pay attention, because you gave me the answer. I'm curious now at the next interview that we do to see if people.
Oh, I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure that they will, because typically whenever somebody does an interview, they don't research the interviewer.
Yeah, I never understood that thing, to be honest.
They don't know where they're talking to. They don't know what they are expecting them to do. Okay, and just like, okay. And so you're coming here that, well, we can do another full thing about mumbling it up in interviews, and people that said certain things to me that were fantastic. Okay,
we are gonna call it "Let's Mumble" as instead of "Let's Mumble." One thing is Theo, the key rotation. That's what I'm interested.
So you can do key rotation in the JWKS spec. Allow you to do key rotation. So JWKS is this phenomenal system. It essentially defines a format and a user flow, and that URL can contain multiple keys, in fact. So because of that, you can download all of that, and you can actually verify it's all defined correctly. So the standards allow you key rotation. So, but you need to follow the standard. Look at it.
Wasn't it how we started the conversation? So
yes,
there are standards that need to be followed.
There are standards, but then are they being followed correctly?
And I don't know if you heard of PASETO, not Pareto, but PASETO. So the platform.
I didn't, Luca. I haven't seen this. We can talk about Cerberus. I think that will be fun.
I mean, okay, let's talk about also Cerberus, because I think it brings me back at least 20 years in time.
Oh yeah. Cerberus. Right? If people don't know about Cerberus, this is one of you are missing something, guys. You should take a look at Cerberus. Cerberus is probably the first system that this kind of flow.
Yeah, and Microsoft kind of like pioneered the use of Cerberus.
Is he still around? Is somebody using Cerberus?
That's a very good question. I think so. I can tell you an experience I had back in 2021 with the company that does all maintenance around the world for commercial airplanes. Like we're talking about Boeing and Dreamliner and so on. They are here in Canada, in Montreal, and I had to help them, and I saw Cerberus for the last time.
Cerberus, not Cerberus, Luca. Cerberus.
Yeah, I was with a K, but it's
with the K. Sorry, guys. It's Cerberus, not.
Unfortunately, we cannot forget the origin of Kerberos, that should be Cerberus because the Cerbero in.
Yes, exactly. That's why I remember it as Cerberus. But
Yeah,
it's
I
Cerberus.
always call it Cerberus because I
Okay,
think it's
this
the
system was first initial release. Reading from Wikipedia, by the way, you should probably donate to Wikipedia if you haven't. Okay, initial release 24th January 1989.
I was 5 years old.
Me too.
And people were starting to use Kerberos.
And they had the concept of the ticket granting ticket, aka the refresh token in JWT.
Okay. Yeah, and what was the mission of Kerberos at the time? Because I think I love their mission. It was like to create this universal exchange authentication system that was pretty interesting, and you could do it also with Active Directory. That was the nicest integration. But so we started this conversation talking about authentication.
Yes.
Let's go to the alter ego. If there's a Dr. Jekyll, there is a Mr. Hyde. Right? That is authorization. So let's start with the first definition: RBAC versus ABAC. So role based versus attribute based. Like, how many times, Theo, have you been in that conversation with ABAC versus RBAC?
100%. Every single project.
So I started asking you a question. Why do you think people are so challenged with picking one or the other?
Okay. ABAC is essentially, which is made attribute based, okay, which in other terms, it means you can read from this object but not write it, and somebody else can write that object but not read it, okay? And that can be defined per object class, per everything, okay? And essentially, it's, you are familiar with it. Okay, let's make an example, very clear example. You have all seen this in AWS AIM, and in every cloud system, authorization logic is attributes based. Okay. In making an example with AWS AIM, which is probably one of the most famous implementation of this. Okay. You have your persona, your user. Okay. And you can attribute to that user. Okay. Permission to do certain things on certain resources, or class of resources, or type of resources.
So you have a user, a resource, an action, right?
Yes.
Those
so you have a user, resource, and action, but it's typically not like that, because in most system you have the concept of organization or teams. Okay, then the user, then the resource, then the action. Typically, there is the fact that a user is a member of a certain team or a member of a certain organizations. It means that it inherits certain class of already prepared attributes and systems and stuff that are already being defined.
So-called environmental attributes, right? So you have
yes,
and
all of this. Okay, to go back to the reason why people don't like this at all. Okay, it's all of this is incredibly complex. Okay, it's a lot of code to use, and unfortunately, okay, all the startups that tried to create some sort of standardized solution for this component, none of them emerged as a de facto standard. Like, I don't know how we got more or less standard database like MySQL or MongoDB, which more or less, even though some are open source or commercial and stuff, but they are popular enough products that a lot of companies would use them, or I've used them in the past, so they will not complain if they see if it's stuff that appears in every project, more or less. Okay.
Well, let's talk about like a little bit the thing. So the ABAC needs to have a policy language. Usually is XACML, Rego, OPA. And I agree with you. I think if you think about Rego versus OPA, like for example, when I was contributing to Kuma, one of the things was this idea of having the ABAC on top of a service mesh. And that was when OPA, made by Stira, kind of like came to place. But I always kind of like feel that when you have a policy engine, because this one are all policy engine,
yes,
you kind of like, I agree with you that a universal policy engine doesn't exist, because one way or another, they will start as a generic idea, and they will steer slowly into either the system policy, the user policy, there's nothing that combines both of them, right?
Yeah, it's possible to combine a lot of things. Okay, the problem is the resulting thing will not be simple. Okay,
Sure, and it will not be performant most of the
and
time.
simple, and it won't be simple. It won't be performant. But I would probably stress on the simplicity more than performance. Okay, as all those things, it can be made performant with caching, to be honest. And I've not, those things doesn't change a lot. So it can be probably, this data can be cached. But what cannot be done, okay, it's the complexity around it. Whoa, blows my mind, okay? Because imagine that you have all that complex logic to be added and built, okay? And there is no standard component, more or less, that you can. Well, there are a few open stuff that you can do, but just a few, okay?
Well, we have been experimenting with Cerbos, right?
Cerbos. So Cerbos is pretty nice. I like Cerbos, but the generic part, we probably can get the Cerbos, the Emre to show up in the future.
Yeah, we should actually ask him. He's a lovely person.
He's a lovely person. We love him. So Cerbos is a good take, especially recently. They did the full flow with WASM, so I am actually. I haven't tried that, so we should probably give it a shot.
I think I was chatting with Emre. One of the things that they massively focused on is that concept of distributed evaluation of the policy, right?
Yes.
What you were saying. So their idea is that why don't we kind of like embed the engine wherever we can and have it local, and let it compute local. But I agree with you. One of the most complicated thing about, I think, ABAC is also as a developer to not be tangled in the whole complexity of policy definition versus.
Yes, it's a like if you try to develop that, okay, it's a nightmare. Okay,
because I think it's way too. The thing is, there's never been a universal DSL for those policies. It's very loose couple, right? If you think about
we can
IAM,
see it, everybody. Yes, AAM. How many people are, if I tell you you should go and write some AAM policies, what would you say?
I mean, I know how to write them, but I know also that probably there is a handful of people that really understand how to use it. But
that's what I meant. Okay, that system is generic.
It's
generic.
You know that I'm in love with two things, just because I experienced them since their inception. I think the ultimate, and here I say, and here I take full accountability for that. The only system that really got the concept of universal distributed policy is the combo IAM, DynamoDB, S3. That's it. Like,
yes,
in here I can see the genius of people like Werner Vogels and few other engineers that they were in the early phase of AWS, that they really understood that concept the deepest, right? Having field level access control in DynamoDB to IAM policy, round of applause. I mean, this is for me engineering, is pure science, right? It's beautiful.
Yes, but
The same with S3.
yes, but if you take all the applications, okay, including most applications that I've built in my career, they don't do that because it's so expensive to implement that correctly that you don't. Okay, simply.
It's not
Okay.
so expensive. I think it requires that kind of like deepest knowledge of how to build a system around it, right? And you know, the downside of all the system is debugging. It's impossible. Like, it's super complicated. Error propagation is done terribly. But let's quickly go on RBAC. So if the Mr. Hyde is ABAC, Dr. Jekyll is role based. Well, probably the other way around. I think Mr. Hyde is RBAC, Dr. Jekyll is ABAC. So what is RBAC? Role
RBAC
based.
is what every developer go implement. Okay, and this never works.
As an admin, I can do this. As a user, I can do that.
Exactly. Okay. And then you end up with a system that is super rigid. Okay. And then the CEO shows up and tells you, oh, I want to implement this kind of flow, and I want to implement migrations between one org to the next of a team. And then you are absolutely screwed because you cannot give some people some rights. Or let's put it another way, okay? Let's say that you want to implement guest accounts, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So I have an account that is a guest, okay, on my system. And as a guest, has only access to certain things, okay?
Or a temporized access. Also,
Or
the
a
other thing that
temporized access. With an ABAC system implementing this, no work at all. It's already built in, okay? With RBAC, I need to go and edit every single API calls in my system to make sure that that is supported. Now, that is a phenomenal waste, okay?
And
this being said, 99% of the application starts as RBAC systems because it's an order of magnitude of simplicity, or probably more, probably even 2 orders of magnitude of less work to implement. So I think if you throw AI at an RBAC system, it can probably do it. If you try to get an ABAC system with AI, you're probably screwed.
what about also the pitfalls of RBAC in large systems? Where do you see them falling apart?
RBAC.
RBAC, yeah. I mean,
genetically, the more users you have, okay, and the more security tied your organization is, the more you need to have. So first of all, okay, let's take a step back. So the user, okay, the end user, the humans, okay, in the flow are think in RBAC, okay?
yeah.
So things about a role, okay? So you open Google Docs, okay? You want to share a document. So you can share the document, and then every user, and then you can say that for every user, if they are a commenter, an editor, or a viewer, okay?
Yeah.
It's great.
Yeah.
And that is the experience that typically what the UI you want to have. And you might be tempted, okay, to implement that, okay, with an RBAC system.
Well, you theoretically, yeah, you can, right? No
Yes.
problem.
But then you start, having very complex organization flows, and then you're screwed.
I'm kind of like, I know that we are almost at time, but I want to kind of
yes, but go back one step.
Yeah.
Yes, you think that is a role based, okay? But every single document in your Google Drive can have different permissions.
Permissions, exactly.
Okay. And that is where things get very hard, because most airbag systems, okay, when you implement them, they refer to the whole set of data. Okay.
Correct.
Typically, an airbag do not have a resource, the concept of a resource. Okay. The moment you have a concept of a resource, you probably have implement ABAC. Okay, or very close to what ABAC is.
And as soon as you have the concept of user, I think, because the issue is that you always need to resolve the user role. Well,
yes,
I can
so
say
you have the user role, okay? You have the user role, okay, which is great, okay? But then the user role in an app, if you have if you have an airbag, typically I am an admin and you are an admin everywhere. Okay.
yeah.
So you cannot have a more organic system over there. Okay.
No. But you could be, for example, in ABAC, the nicest thing is that you can be admins, admin/star or admin star, and then you can be Luca at the same time.
Yes.
That's the thing. I think it's nice the ubiquity of how you can construct systems, but he also makes it very complicated, because now you can have a matroska of different kind of like nested authorization, and then where it probably becomes very nasty. Theo, I know that we are almost at time. I have a question for you.
Ooh, I love questions.
But it's a practical question.
We
We didn't touch at all on a very, very big topic, that is zero trust network. That's a very strong architectural pattern, infrastructure pattern, system pattern, security pattern. And
so
with MTLS and so on. And I know that we could spend probably, I think it's very practical, given also our experience in debating and solving this problem. So I'm thinking, shall we stop for today and then have a follow-up on zero trust and MTLS?
Yes, let's do that. Let's do that, Luca. Okay. I think it's we need to talk a lot about these topics, okay? Because there is a lot of big misconceptions, okay? And a lot of people think this is way harder than it should be, okay? And so, yeah, we should do all the work.
So let's park it. I'm going to say that for today, we are done. But we will be here next week, same time, same place, talking about zero trust networks and MTLS, credential management, token-based authentication, and so on. But not only. If you have any question, feel free to ask them. We'll be more than happy to answer. But till then, hold tight. We're going to continue this topic. Right, Matteo?
Yes, let's do that.
See you next week then. Grazie, Teo.
Bye.
Ciao. Bye.
Ciao.
Ciao.